we have to talk about Tesla's products that are being overlooked right now. Why is this important? Because Tesla, yes, we know it's all about robotaxis, it's all about Optimus, it's all about space AI. But there are some things happening in Tesla that are actually worth mentioning because they show us that while everyone is staring at the big fat things that define the future, that there are also other things going on that are more in the conventional space but actually connected to that future. And of course, I'm talking about the Semi. In case you didn't know, the Tesla Semi is this beautiful truck. Look at this. This beautiful and now trucking is an enormous market, a market that actually has multi-trillion dollar potential. The entire goods transportation market also eating into train transportation and the transportation of goods on rail. That is an adjacent competitive market to some extent. There's some overlap, of course. When you think about these trucks driving on the highway, often there are also rail pathways. So the future, you can see these trucks also taking over more from rail. But of course, there's also a giant trucking industry. Think about the United States and all the trucking that's going on, but also in Europe, also all over the place. When you're on the highway, count all the trucks, the big trucks, and you will see this is a ridiculously large market. It is actually the entire goods and services terrestrial transportation related to this. So we are talking about the entire economy being transported through these things, unless they're being flown, but even from airports, they need to be loaded into these things. So this is not a small thing. It's just a thing that people tend to overlook because it's so specialized and no one really thinks about it. Tesla does think about it, and I want to today go into an amazing tweet or post we got from Jeeps Texas. Shout out to Jeeps Texas. This is a great write-up that explains how huge this is. And of course, there is a tweak to it that makes it even bigger that I'm going to go into at the end of this. But let's first look at some economics so we understand from a stock perspective, from an investor perspective, from a perspective of people who are interested in Tesla as a company, why this is so important. So Jeeps TX makes a huge prediction. Tesla Semi will outsell diesel Class 8 trucks. In case you don't know what that means, these are basically the core, the workhorses of the entire semi market, right, of all these trucks. So most people have no idea what the Semi is about to do to Class 8 diesel truck sales in America. So in 2025, the US saw roughly 208,000 Class 8 heavy trucks sold. Right? These things cost $200,000 to $300,000, and you can do the math, right? That's basically 10x a car, maybe 8x a car. So if you multiply this with 10, talking about 2 million cars. It's the equivalent in terms of revenue of adding another 2 million Model Ys. Let's make it conservative, 1.5 million Model Ys, right? Or Model 3s. Just imagine what that would do to the stock. This is not pie in the sky. This is not Robotaxi, Optimus fantasies. This is the central core business of Tesla. And we are talking about the equivalent of 1.5 million additional sales if they would take over the entire market. But let's see what's happening here. And Jeeps Texas says it's positioned squarely in the 33,000 pound GVWR over the road big rig category. Tesla's dedicated Nevada factory is designed for a full ramp capacity of 50,000 units annually, a milestone targeted for the second half of 2026. So there you have it. This year, in the second half, we already expect to Tesla hitting that run rate of 50,000 units annually. Of course, that doesn't mean 50,000 units this year. It means hitting the run rate maybe with a little bit of luck by December. Going into 2027 with the expectation of a full ramp, meaning 50,000 units in 2027. So achieving this 50,000 unit target in sales means they would capture, simple math, 25% of the total US Class 8 market volume. And as you know, that if that's, let's do simple math, roughly 1.5 million Model Ys, additional Model Ys sold. That is the equivalent of a quarter of that. So let's say 400,000 additional sales. And if you 100,000 per quarter, think in Model Y equivalents. Now, if you follow Tesla at all and you look at these deliveries, quarterly deliveries, just think about that. Think about what would happen if Tesla would deliver 100,000 additional Model Ys every single quarter. Would that be good for the stock? Yes, it would. Would it be transformative for the stock? Would it drive the stock to 600? No, it wouldn't. But it would provide a tremendous, continuous tailwind on the fundamentals. That's all we need. It would hold the stock up and add a lot of momentum in the 5%, 10% stock incremental increase range. Very powerful. No one talks about it. And that is one of these big de-risking components that's coming into the stock here. And here is why Tesla can just move into a completely new market and just take over. Why can Tesla do that? Because Tesla, again, thinks based on first principles, based on a lot of engineering capability. They were not the first people who had the idea about an electric truck, but they were the first ones who actually make it happen in an economically and manufacturing way that makes sense. So here is the math that we actually understand about the economics. Diesel costs is standard class 8 diesel trucks. So the competition averages about 6.5 miles per gallon, right? These are big things. Not very good mile per gallon ratios. With diesel prices reaching $5.50 per gallon during recent price spikes, fueling a traditional rig for a 500-mile trip costs a fleet operator around $375 every 500 miles. Electric efficiency, the Tesla Semi operates at an impressive efficiency, 1.64 to 1.7 kilowatt hour. Long story short, $75 in electricity. So you're competing $375 operating costs on diesel versus 75. Just let that sink in. Imagine any product category where you move in and suddenly, what is that, like a quarter, less than a quarter, like 20%, you cut costs, operating costs by 80% just on fuel costs. You can't compete with that. You need to buy these things. As Tesla scales the Nevada factory and expands its megacharger network, important, right? You need these megachargers all across the nation. Across commercial routes, easier than superchargers because it's not that many routes compared to cars. The legacy diesel big rig isn't just facing new competition, it's facing structural obsolescence. So most people have no idea what the Semi is about to do class 8 diesel truck sales in America. So there you have it. That is the pitch. When you look at that beautiful thing here, look at how cool this looks like. This comes out of left field for a lot of people who only focus on the cars and only focus on, of course, Robotaxi and Optimus, but I just want to throw this in. This is happening. It's a very big deal. And when you understand that just on fuel costs alone, it's lowering operating costs, let that sink in by 80%. You know what the other piece of the operating costs are? The actual bigger piece of the operating costs, right? If you drive this route and you drive 500 miles, maybe in a day, I don't know how long you can drive. It is the driver. Okay, because the driver needs to get paid. And the driver is more than the energy costs. And the driver, guess what happens to the driver in a robo-trucking environment that I predict we will see starting in 2027, at least some pilots or something, where we start replacing human drivers with these robo-trucks. And then you're not just talking about 80% reduction of fuel costs, but you're talking about 80% plus reduction of the actual complete operating costs for a trucking business. And when that happens, no trucking company in America can sit there and not switch to the Tesla Semi. So it is safe to say, in my opinion, that Tesla Semi will be sold out forever. Tesla Semi will be able not just to take over close to 100% of the market share, but also replace the entire install base of trucks. Because once you're in the business of dropping operating costs, complete operating costs for any business by 80%, there is no alternative anymore. And if you think some competitor from China or whatever can compete with the Tesla Semi, show me the goods. Show it to me in the comments. Show it to me in the Pioneer Academy. Go to pioneeracademy.com or to pioneerlens.org. Ask you questions and show me who can actually compete with that. Who has an electric truck that can be manufactured at scale, deployed in the United States, and is a robo-trucking ready thing? I want to see that because I don't believe it, or I believe it when I see it. Hey, on this channel, we do something very important. We deeply analyze, understand, and predict capital, AGI, and politics. Not just to beat the markets and make a lot of money, even though that's important, but also to build a new society and make the future good for all of us, the pioneers. If you want to help me on this journey, you can do that by doing a very simple thing. Like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. Thank you so much for your support, and let's get back to the video. And that means Tesla is unlocking something huge. By the way, this will not just make money like the money you make by selling the semis. It will make money through a subscription model, transportation as a service. Once you have robo-trucking installed, they will probably still go through the trucking companies because it's complicated to get all the business and stuff. But these companies can now pay Tesla a significant share of what is formerly known as the operating costs. If you replace a driver, Tesla's not going to give you robo-trucking for free. It's going to probably charge you 20% or something, maybe 10%, 10 or 20% of the driver's salary. The AI paradigm at full play. The AI paradigm replacing human workers, here drivers, and taking a share of the salary. Probably 20%, between 10 and 20% is my estimate. And then we are talking about 80% reduction, 80% in energy costs, 80% in labor costs. And this 20% in labor costs goes straight to Tesla's bottom line. And that is where this turns from 1.5 million additional Model Y sales or 400,000 additional Model Y sales into something enormous that will eclipse the free cash flow generated by the entire core business of Tesla just through robo-trucking alone. Of course, the rest comes on top of it, Robotaxi and so on. But this is just another reason why Tesla is so well positioned. I want to sound like a fanboy. I'm just giving you the facts and giving myself the facts, and that is exactly what's happening here. That is why Tesla has a ridiculously high price to earnings ratio right now, because all these things are not just coming up. They are not just on a discounted cash flow basis, huge value chunks of the stock. These are also right now at the inflection point in 2026, both Robotaxi and the Semi, and next year probably robo-trucking is huge. So I hope that was interesting. It gives you a little bit of perspective what this stock has in store for us. And after all the long waits, 2026 is the year where they all come into play. I hope that was interesting, and see you tomorrow.